1995, 5 high school basketball players and their coach left a playoff game and were never seen again. For 20 years, their disappearance haunted a small Virginia town, until a lone hiker stumbled upon a buried van deep in the woods. What she triggered would unravel decades of silence, reveal a horrifying truth, and bring a grieving mother face to face with the last words her son ever wrote. Welcome to Minority Struggles. If this story hits home, subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, let's begin. The gym at Jefferson High was on fire that night. Not literally, but with sound, sweat, and stomping feet. The Knights had just pulled off a last-second upset in the regional playoffs, beating Charlottesville by 2 points in the final seconds. The crowd had gone wild. Horns blared. Pom-poms shook. The team lifted each other in a huddle of laughter and exhaustion under the flickering scoreboard. It was 1995, and everything about the night felt bigger than it was. Music louder, future brighter, air thicker with teenage invincibility. Coach Reuben Shaw clapped his players on the back as they grabbed their duffel bags. The old man didn't smile often, but tonight he allowed himself a small one. His boys had played their hearts out. No fights, no texts. Just clean, hard basketball. He'd been coaching for 20 years, and this team, this exact group, felt like something special. They had grit. They had heart. And for a few of them, like Jeremiah Price, maybe even a shot at something bigger. By 10:05 p.m., the van was packed. It wasn't a fancy bus, just the school's aging Navy Ford club wagon. Shaw drove, like he always did, not trusting a sub to handle his kids. Marcus Tate rode shotgun, long legs folded tight. In the back were Jem Price, Darnell Wilkes, Devin Knox, and Anthony Tone Fields, still trading jokes and leftover fries from a gas station bag. The parking lot was half empty now, the lights humming above them in tall halos. Gloria Price stood at the edge of the lot, arms folded under her windbreaker. She never missed a game, not since Jem was in 8th grade. She gave him a 2-finger wave as the van rolled past, and he waved back with a grin that still had baby teeth in it. She didn't know it would be the last time she saw her son's face in the flesh. The van pulled out on a Highway 33, heading east back toward their small town in Louisa County. It was supposed to be a 90-minute drive. Routine. They made it dozens of times, but they never arrived. By midnight, the first parents started to worry. Devin's mother called Coach Shaw's landline and got no answer. Then Tone's girlfriend said he never called her like he promised. At 12:47 a.m., Gloria Price called the police. By 1:12 a.m., officers were out scanning the highway with floodlights. The storm rolled in around 2. Rain like needles. Trees swayed like drunks. Visibility was terrible, but still, no sign of a crash. No tire marks. No broken guardrails. The van had simply disappeared. The next morning, the local paper ran a small headline. High school basketball team missing after victory. TV crews arrived by noon. Helicopters scanned nearby woods. Dogs sniffed along back roads. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the underbrush. They found nothing. Not a scrap of metal. Not a jersey. Not a footprint. The van had vanished like smoke. As days passed, the tone shifted. Reporters speculated. Rumors grew. Some blamed Coach Shaw, asking why he hadn't called. Others pointed fingers at Darnell, bringing up an old shoplifting incident and whispering that maybe the team ran off. People questioned the school's safety policies. Anonymous letters claimed sightings of the boys at bus stops, diners, truck stops. None of them led anywhere. After a week, the coverage slowed. After a month, only Gloria Price still showed up at the sheriff's office every Friday with a list of new questions. By fall, the state officially changed the classification from active missing persons to presumed deceased. Gloria didn't hold a funeral. She said, "I can't bury a ghost." The town slowly moved on, or at least pretended to. The Knights forfeited their next season. A new coach came. New banners went up in the gym. A photo of a 1995 team remained in the trophy case by the front office, covered eventually in dust and sun fade. But for those who knew the boys, who remember Marcus's quiet loyalty, Devin's ridiculous dance moves, Tone's sleepy grin, it never really went away. Especially not for Gloria. She kept Jim's room exactly as he left it. Posters on the wall. Homework half finished. Dirty socks still in the corner. Every year on his birthday, she wrote him a letter. Every Christmas, she lit a candle in the window. People pitied her at first, then avoided her, then forgot. But she didn't stop looking. She kept every clipping, every tip, every map. She even hired a private investigator in 2004 with her tax refund. He quit after 6 months. Too cold, he said. Too long gone. And still she hoped. Because until someone showed her her boy's body, until someone could explain how 5 people, a van, and a dream could disappear into nothing, she refused to believe that was the end. Then, one quiet fall morning, 20 years to the month after the team vanished, a woman named Lydia Vega set off alone on a photography hike in the Pine Hollow Preserve, 70 miles northeast of where the team was last seen. She had no idea that just a few steps off trail, under a layer of moss and brush, a piece of rusted metal waited to change everything. The trail wasn't even on most maps. Pine Hollow Preserve was a messy patch of federal forest land. No real visitor center, no restrooms, just trees, cliffs, and silence. Lydia Vega liked it that way. She came out here to breathe, to walk, to escape people asking why she quit the EMT job, why she lived alone, why she never stayed in one place for long. It was late October, and the leaves had already started to fall. The air smelled like pine needles and cold dirt. Lydia hiked with a small camera, a thermos of coffee, and no plan. That's when she noticed it. A sliver of metal under a blanket of leaves about 30 feet downhill from the main trail. Something about the way the ground sloped, the way the moss grew across the rise. She stopped, bent down, brushing the leaves aside, her breath caught. It was a bumper, a van bumper. She scrambled down farther, peeling back moss and dirt, until the full corner of a rusted vehicle revealed itself. Buried nose first against the slope, almost entirely hidden by forest growth and time. Her hand shook as she backed away. She didn't need to open it to know what this was. She just took 3 careful photos, turned around, and started calling every number she could think of with a signal. By the next morning, the woods were no longer quiet. Police vehicles, search crews, tents, drones, and floodlights now crowded the site. Yellow tape ran from tree to tree. A coroner's van idled nearby. For the first time in 2 decades, something had surfaced. Something real. Inside the wreckage, they found 3 bodies. 2 in middle seats. 1 in the driver's seat. The bones were curled in strange positions, long since picked clean by time and weather. Uniform fragments still clung to one of the skeletons in the back row. A medallion reading Coach Shaw was found near the driver's side footwell. The van had clearly rolled, but not off any marked road. It sat too deep into the woods. Investigators speculated it had been driven off-road deliberately, maybe by force, maybe while trying to escape something. But none of that explained how it had remained hidden for 20 years. No sign, no clue. The remains were transported to Richmond for forensic analysis. News crews descended on Louisa County like a second storm. Microphones were shoved into old faces. Archival footage aired on repeat. The missing nights returned to headlines they hadn't graced since dial-up internet. Detective Elijah Moore watched the coverage from his desk in Charlottesville, jaw tight. He had just turned 13 when the team vanished. He remembered watching the games on local TV. His older cousin was a Jefferson High alum. Everyone talked about Jim Price, about the team's shot at state. The night they disappeared, Elijah remembered his mother whispering, "Not again." Now he was 33, working cold cases across the region. And he knew this wasn't an accident. Not the way they had found it. Not with 2 boys still missing. Jim Price and Darnell Wilkes were not among the dead. That meant something. He drove straight to the site. By then, Lydia Vega had already given her full statement and quietly left. She didn't want to be a part of the media frenzy. But she handed over the SD card with every photo she took. Wide shots, tire impressions, even close-ups of a rusted high-top shoe wedged beneath the van. Forensics confirmed the driver was Reuben Shaw. The body in the middle seat belonged to Marcus Tate, the quiet forward. The one in the rear, smallest frame, was identified as Devin Knox. His mother had to be sedated when they brought her the news. But the shock hadn't even begun to settle before the questions started piling up. Why were only 3 boys inside? Why did Devin still have his jersey on, but Marcus didn't? Why were all the seatbelts cut? Why did the windshield crack outward? And why were there claw marks on the inside of the door? Detective Moore stood beside the wreckage, arms crossed, staring into the van's collapsed roof. This wasn't just a crash. Something had happened. Something violent. Something no one wanted to name yet. Back in town, Gloria Price watched the news from her living room, hands clenched around a throw pillow. The reporter said 3 sets of remains were recovered. Gloria knew the names before they said them. Not her son. Not Jim. She didn't know what that meant yet. Relief? Dread? Hope's cruel cousin? She stood and turned off the TV. For 20 years, she had waited for an answer. And now, finally, someone had found something. But it wasn't her son. He was still out there. She could feel it. 2 days later, the crime scene unit returned to the area for a second sweep. What they found down the hill, about 50 yards deeper into the brush, made the case go national. A trail of rusted soda cans, a cracked cassette tape, and wedged under a moss-covered rock, half buried in mud, was a high school notebook wrapped tightly in plastic and sealed with duct tape. On the first page, in faded black ink, "If someone finds this, please tell my mom I didn't stop fighting." It was signed, Jim Price. And the world exploded. The notebook was warped but intact. 20 pages, front and back, dated across 2 years, 1995 to 1997. The ink had faded in places, but most of the writing remained legible. The forensic lab in Richmond scanned and preserved each page before handing it over to the investigative unit. Detective Elijah Moore sat alone in a quiet conference room when he first read it. He didn't move for almost an hour. Jim Price's handwriting was unmistakable. Strong, capital letters. Slanted lowercase. Each entry read like a teenager trying to stay sane in the dark. October 27th, 1995. I don't know where we are. Coach is hurt. Darnell won't stop yelling. Marcus is bleeding. I can't tell if the van flipped or someone pushed it. The windshield is cracked. We can't open the doors. October 29th. Devin stopped talking today. He's curled up with his jacket over his face. It smells like oil and leaves in here. I keep hearing footsteps outside at night. I don't think it's animals. November 3rd. Something's wrong. Darnell says he saw someone watching us through the trees. He said the man had a beard and stood too still. I didn't see him, but I believe it. November 10th. Coach is gone. He stopped breathing. Marcus thinks we're being hunted. I think so too. December 2nd. Devin's gone too. One night, he just stopped moving. Darnell and I dragged him outside and buried him with rocks. I don't know what else to do. Detective Moore closed the notebook on that page. It was too much. The press only saw a redacted version of the story. The police didn't release the full text, only confirming that the notebook was authentic and that it appeared Jim and the others survived the crash for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. But behind closed doors, Moore kept reading. The entries grew more erratic. The dates became inconsistent. Some pages were frantic, as if written in the dark. January 1996. We saw headlights one night. Thought someone was coming, but it wasn't a ranger. It was him again. He just stood there, watching. Darnell threw a rock. The man didn't even flinch. February 1996. Marcus started saying weird things before he died. Said the man in the woods had been at the game, watching us since before the playoffs. That he knew who we were. April 1996. I found an old trail. It leads away from the van. I think he uses it. I'm going to leave this notebook in case I don't come back. The last full entry was dated August 1997. I think he's taking Darnell somewhere else. He says I'm too loud. I tried to run. Coach didn't make it. If someone finds this, tell my mom I didn't stop fighting. That was it. No signature. Just an imprint where the pen had pressed down too hard. Moore sat in his car for an hour before calling Gloria Price. He didn't tell her everything. Just enough. There's proof Jim survived the crash, he said. He lived for months. Maybe years. Long enough to write. On the other end of the line, Gloria didn't speak. She just breathed hard. I need you to come to Richmond, Moore said. You should see it for yourself. She arrived the next morning with her sister. She read the pages in silence, tears falling steadily into her lap. When she finished, she folded the last page slowly like it was glass and said, "Then where is he now?" Moore had no answer. Forensics found additional traces near the van site. A shoe print in dried mud matching Darnell's size, half buried near a game trail. They also uncovered small animal traps and a rusted axe hidden under rocks. None of it was recent, but none of it should have been there either. A hiker's tip from 1996 was re-examined. Back then, a man reported seeing a bearded guy and a teenage boy hauling firewood near an unmarked cabin. It had been dismissed at the time. Nothing matched any open cases. Now, Moore saw it differently. He built a radius from the van site, began overlaying every known structure in the area. Hunting shacks, fire towers, closed ranger cabins. Most had long since collapsed. But one, the Kessler Ridge Fire Lookout, was still standing as of 10 years ago. Moore and a small team set out the next day. They found it empty. Broken furniture, burned logs, but no bones, no bedding, just the smell of mildew and dust. And something else. A tin coffee can, sealed with duct tape. Inside, 5 Polaroid photos. 3 of them were blurred. One showed a teen boy, thin, dark-skinned, sitting near a fire with a fishing pole. The last photo made Moore's stomach twist. A white man in his 50s, heavy beard, holding up a dead rabbit by the ears, smiling at the camera. In the background, a boy with his back turned, walking toward the trees. Moore scanned the photo, ran facial recognition, cross-referenced archives. The name came back, Martin Kane, former wilderness instructor, fired from a boys' summer program in 1988 for inappropriate conduct, questioned in 2 disappearances, one in Virginia, one in Tennessee. Charges were never filed. He moved west in 2001, died in a cabin fire in Alaska in 2002. Everything aligned. Everything except the ending. There were still 2 bodies missing. Still no confirmed time of death. No direct proof that Kane was at the game or that he drove the team off the road. The van was found miles off course. The logs didn't line up. The timelines bled into shadows. But Moore knew one thing for sure. This man had been watching those boys long before the crash. And Jim Price had known it. The photo of Martin Kane hit the news cycle like a match to dry grass. By the end of the day, every major outlet had his face plastered across their banner headlines. The man behind the vanishing? Wilderness predator identified in missing basketball team case. Martin Kane, ghost of the Appalachians. But Gloria Price didn't care about headlines. She cared about the silence that came after. No arrests. No charges. Just another dead man buried thousands of miles away, who'd taken everything and answered for nothing. Detective Elijah Moore sat across from her in the cold, gray-walled office of the Cold Case Division. He slid a manila folder across the table. It's all we've got on Kane. Sealed warnings, internal memos, complaints from 3 different jurisdictions. All buried or ignored. Gloria didn't even open it. Was he at the game? She asked. Moore nodded slowly. We believe so. A photo from a local paper shows him standing in the background near the bleachers. He wasn't on any staff lists. Didn't work for the school. But he was there. Gloria clenched her jaw, watching them. Yes. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, I want to go up there, where the van was found. Moore hesitated. It's not safe. The terrain's still active, and we haven't cleared every structure. But when it's secure, I'll take you. That promise sat in the air like a thread. Back in the field, Moore's team pressed deeper into the woods surrounding the van site. They combed every slope, every ravine, every deer path. Then they found something strange. Near the far ridge, a retired ranger station, long thought collapsed, was discovered still standing, just hidden under heavy brush and brambles. The roof sagged. The windows were shattered. But inside was evidence that someone had lived there. Old soup cans, strips of blanket nailed over vents. A child's drawing, aged and curled, showing 5 stick figures holding a basketball. One of them had an X drawn over its face. Moore stood in the doorway, flashlight scanning the room. He kept them here, he said aloud. The team collected everything, packed it into evidence bags, documented it. But again, no bones, no blood, just echoes. Meanwhile, Lydia Vega, the hiker who started all this, was watching it all unfold from the edges. She hadn't asked for any of it, but something about those woods stayed with her. Something about the notebook, the fire pit, the eerie quiet. She returned one morning with her dog, this time sticking to the marked trail. About half a mile beyond a ranger station, her dog stopped cold, barked once, then froze, sniffing the ground. There, buried shallow under pine needles, was a rusted lunchbox. Inside, another cassette tape. When Moore listened to it back at the station, the sound was faint, cracking, wind across the mic. But then a voice, young, unsteady, whispering, "My name is Jeremiah Price. I was taken after the crash. He watches us at night. We can't run. Coach tried and..." The tape cut out in static. Moore rewound it, heart pounding. Played it again. Same words. "My name is Jeremiah Price." It was proof. Not just that Jim survived the crash, but that he was taken, moved, possibly alive months after the van was buried. That same week, a new witness came forward. His name was Randy Pierce, retired janitor, 71, lived on the outskirts of town in a small trailer. Said he'd been afraid to speak up back then. Said he didn't trust the police at the time. He sat in front of Moore, hands shaking as he held an old photo. "I saw that man," Randy said. "The one in the news." "Kane. Where?" "School parking lot. Day before the team left. He was arguing with one of the boys. Big one. Loud voice. The kid said, 'You're not supposed to be here.' Kane said, 'You promised me.' Moore leaned in. 'Which kid?' 'I think it was Darnell.' Moore's stomach dropped. The next morning, Moore reopened the original case files. Looked through every detail the old investigators had dismissed. Buried in a handwritten interview was a note. Girl claims boyfriend made strange call from payphone night of disappearance. Says he sounded scared. The girl's name was Nina Carter. Now married, living in Roanoke. Moore found her working at a daycare center. When he asked about the call, she didn't hesitate. "It was Tone," she said. "He called me that night from some payphone. I remember because he said he didn't have long. He just said, 'If anything happens, look into that guy at the gym.' I asked who. He said, 'The one who talks to Darnell after practice.' Then the line cut. 'Did you tell anyone?' I told the principal. He said it was probably nothing." Moore drove back in silence, the weight of everything building. This wasn't just a crash. It had never been a crash. It had been a trap. Someone targeted them, followed them, maybe even stalked them for weeks, waiting for a chance. And now that someone was dead, the only question that remained, were Jim and Darnell still alive when Kane died in 2002? Gloria still believed. Every night she sat on her porch, staring out into the darkness with Jim's photo in her lap. The notebook stayed on the table inside, beside a lit candle. One night, Moore sat beside her, brought her the tape. They listened together in the quiet. When it ended, Gloria didn't cry. She just whispered, "He kept fighting." Moore nodded. "We're still fighting too." And they were. Because now the world finally believed them. But belief wasn't justice. And it wasn't closure. Not yet. The leaf had started to fall again when Lydia Vega returned to the ridge. She hadn't planned to. After all the media, the interviews, the sleepless nights, wondering if she should have looked harder the first time, she swore she was done. But something kept tugging at her. Maybe it was the image of that rusted van door half buried under leaves. Maybe it was the notebook. Maybe it was Jim's voice on that tape, broken and whispering like he wasn't sure anyone would ever hear him. This time, she brought her dog, Milo, and borrowed a friend's old search and rescue GPS unit. She followed the same trail from 6 months earlier, then veered off through thick underbrush, back to the slope where she'd first spotted the van. The yellow tape was gone now. The trees were quiet again, but something in her gut told her there was more. Milo stopped suddenly. His ears perked up. He sniffed the air, then darted left through a cluster of pine. "Whoa, Milo," Lydia called, shoving through branches to follow. She found him standing beside what looked like a collapsed fire pit, just a ring of blackened stones and a pile of old ash. At first, it didn't seem like much. Then she spotted it, a dented shoebox, half buried in dirt beneath a log. She dropped to her knees and pried it free. The lid was sealed with ancient duct tape, cracking at the edges. Inside, wrapped in a trash bag, were old clothes, stiff with time and dampness. A cracked Walkman with batteries long corroded, and something wrapped in a Ziploc bag. It was another notebook. But this one was different. Thinner. Water-damaged. She didn't open it. She hiked back to the ranger station and handed it directly to the first officer she saw. Within 2 days, the case exploded again. Inside the notebook were 6 pages, all written in the same hand. Jem Price's hand. The entries were harder to read than the last, stained and faded. But they were dated June to August, 1997. Still alive. We're not in the van anymore. He moved us. Said, too many people getting close. Darnell fought him. Got hit. He's okay now, but won't talk. Another entry followed 2 weeks later. He calls at his camp. Says we should be grateful. Says I'm difficult. Tells me Darnell is obedient. I don't believe him. The final entry, dated August 18th, 1997, read, he says he's taking Darnell somewhere else. I think he's trying to split us up. I don't know why. I don't trust him. If someone finds this, tell my mom I didn't stop fighting. Please, don't let them forget us. That line hit like a gut punch. Moore read it over and over again, alone in his office. The notebook was authenticated. No doubt it was Jem's. The contents matched his previous journal. The timeline aligned. The psychology aligned. But more importantly, it confirmed the worst. Martin Cain hadn't just crashed the van. He had hunted them, moved them, held them, split them apart. The FBI was officially brought in. A manhunt was reinitiated, despite Cain's known death in 2002. His last known location was a cabin in southeast Alaska that had burned in what was ruled an accident. No remains were ever recovered, only assumed. But now that assumption no longer seemed acceptable. A forensic sketch artist worked with multiple witnesses to recreate Cain's face based on old-school footage and Lydia's photo. The sketch was distributed nationwide. Meanwhile, the area around Pine Hollow was scoured again. This time, they went deeper. Using cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar, the search crews located an old root cellar nearly a mile from the fire pit. It had been camouflaged under years of growth, sealed with boards and rocks. Inside were more cans, more gear, and on the far wall, etched into the concrete with something sharp, were names. Jem, Darnell, Marcus, Coach, each one carved carefully, as if it mattered that they'd be remembered. But no remains were found. No signs of recent life. Only ghosts. The public was torn. Some believed Jem had died out there, his body never found. Others believed he had escaped, maybe even lived under another name. A few wild theories claimed he'd gone vigilante and was hunting other predators. Most dismissed those as fantasy. But for Gloria Price, the truth was clear. My son was strong, she told the news cameras. He lived 2 years after they said he was dead. He protected his teammates. He fought back. That's who he was. The story went viral again. Hashtags flooded social media. Candlelight vigils were held outside Jefferson High. Old teammates, classmates, teachers, all came forward with memories. I remember Jem staying late to help Coach Shaw clean up. I remember Darnell giving his lunch to another kid once. I remember Marcus writing poems in the margins of his math book. They weren't just victims anymore. They were boys, sons, brothers, real. The state held a formal hearing to declare Martin Cain the primary suspect. His surviving relatives refused interviews. His cabin in Alaska was re-examined. The fire report re-reviewed. But still, no physical proof he was dead. The case was technically closed, ruled an abduction homicide. But everyone knew it wasn't really over. Not for Gloria. Not for Elijah Moore. Not for the 2 boys who were still out there somewhere. Lost, buried, or alive. Jem's final words stayed with Moore as he drove back from the forest that last day. I didn't stop fighting. He thought of the notebook, the fire pit, the Walkman, the names on the wall, and he realized they had never stopped fighting either. All of them, in every way they could. From inside a van, from the woods, from the dark. Now, it was up to everyone else not to let that fight be forgotten. The state closed the case on a Thursday morning in December. It wasn't an event. There was no courtroom drama, no breaking news banner, just a sealed file signed off by the Virginia Attorney General officially declaring the Jefferson High vanishing and abduction homicide involving multiple victims. Martin Kane was named the sole suspect, posthumously. The language used was clinical. Cold. Presumed deceased. Unrecoverable remains. Primary perpetrator believed deceased in unrelated incident, 2002. Detective Elijah Moore read the final report alone in his office. He stared at the last page, where the conclusion was typed neatly above a red stamp that read closed. He didn't feel closure. 2 boys were still missing. No one would be arrested. No one would be held accountable. There would be no trial, no cross-examinations, no moments where the truth would be shouted in a courtroom and echoed in silence. Just a man long dead, a trail long cold, and a community left wondering how 5 promising young lives have been stolen in silence. Moore took the folder and drove to Louisa County. He didn't call ahead. Just knocked on Gloria Price's door that evening, the last bit of sunlight curling behind him like smoke. She opened the door slowly, her shoulders thinner now than they'd been months ago, but her eyes still locked onto his with steel. "Is it done?" she asked. Moore nodded. "They closed it today." Gloria stepped aside, and he walked in. The house hadn't changed. Jim's photo was still on the mantel. The candle beside it was new. He set the folder on her kitchen table. She didn't reach for it. "I brought the original notebook," Moore said. "The second one's still in evidence, but I wanted you to have this." He pulled it from a padded envelope. Worn, water damaged, folded from weeks of being read and reread, but still whole. She took it like it was made of glass. "He wrote this while they thought he was dead," she whispered, thumbing through the pages. He kept it safe, kept it hidden, and no one heard him. Moore sat across from her. "They're listening now." She shook her head. "Not enough." Then she stood, went to a cabinet, returned with a small cloth bag. From it, she pulled out Jim's basketball jersey, number 3, navy and gold, the seams fraying at the shoulders. "I've kept this since the day he disappeared," she said. "I never washed it, never folded it, just waited." Moore's throat tightened. "There's something else you should see," he said quietly. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was taken just last week. A new photo of the Jefferson High Gymnasium. Renovated. Polished hardwood. New lighting. And on the far wall, mounted under glass, a new addition. A framed photo of the 1995 team. Coach Shaw, Jim, Marcus, Devin, Darnell, and Tone, all lined up in their game uniforms, arms around each other. Below it, a bronze plaque. "They never gave up. Neither did we." Gloria ran her fingers across the photo like it was a face. "Your son's jersey is retired now," Moore added. "It hangs in the rafters." She didn't cry right away. She just stared. Then, softly, almost too quietly to hear, she whispered, "He made it matter." Moore left her there in the silence, holding the photo and the notebook, surrounded by the ghosts she refused to let be forgotten. Outside, the wind rustled through the branches. Somewhere, a porch light flicked on. The town of Louisa moved forward like it always did. But that house, that woman, held on to time differently. 2 weeks later, a candlelight vigil was held in the new gym. Students who hadn't even been born when the team vanished stood shoulder to shoulder with parents, teachers, and former teammates. Coach Shaw's daughter spoke. So did Lydia Vega, who had flown in from North Carolina. Moore stood in the back, watching as Gloria took the stage last. She didn't speak long, just a few words. "My son wasn't lost. He was taken, but he never gave up. He fought every day, and he left proof behind. That's who he was. Not a victim, not a ghost. A fighter, a boy with a jersey and a mother who still believes he's out there, somewhere, waiting to be heard." When she stepped down, the room was silent. Then, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. And then everyone was on their feet. It wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement, recognition. Jem Price's story had become more than a cold case. It had become a legacy. Months passed. Gloria still lit the candle every night. Moore transferred to the state's new Special Investigations Unit, focused on historical abuse and unresolved disappearances. Jefferson High launched a scholarship fund in the team's name. And on a quiet hill, just beyond the tree line in Pine Hollow, the site where the van had been recovered was marked with a new wooden sign. in memory of the Knights. Jim Price, Marcus Tate, Devin Knox, Darnell Wilkes, Coach Reuben Shaw. Gone but not forgotten. Beneath that, carved by hand, were 5 words. Words no one could ever erase again. I didn't stop fighting. That's how the world finally remembered them. Not by how they were taken, but by how they refused to disappear.